Hello and welcome back to Rarities Gaming and more Path of Exile 2. Today I'm following up on my video from last night to help give you the tools to make a powerful build, a character, faster. It turns out a lot of people are having a harder time with the first part of the game than expected. I'm seeing it all over Reddit, Twitter, and a lot of discussion about the game. Tough bosses and mechanics that are even often one-shotting some people who maybe aren't prepared. Maybe they're experiencing health bars for these targets that are a little bit too big for, say, a reasonable fight due to their low damage. So how do you make yourself powerful in that opening act or act 2 as well? As you can see, I was able to walk through the final boss of the first act my first night of play pretty easily. Another example was, say, one of the tougher bosses we were warned about from the pre-release session. This dude with a nasty sword that slams down, as well as these arrow barrage mechanics. Those can one-shot, but I was able to breeze through with great damage myself. So I think there's a few core concepts to follow and apply to your own setup that you could easily do right now to achieve good results. So let's run through those and hopefully it'll be useful to hear. I'm making this video at the start of Act 2, literally on day 2, just to give you some context. But I'm going to cut it up into two sections, your offense and your defense. Offense is going to be decided by quite a lot. If you're a martial class like me with, say, mercenary, I'm using damage of my weapon to apply damage. If you're a caster, it's a little bit different, but just stick with me. A key part of our damage, in this case for most martial classes, is going to be your actual weapon. So my crossbow here has physical damage 19 to 55. This is insane at the start of Act 2. If you hold Alt when looking at something, you get more information. And here you can see the item level is 23 at the start of Act 2. That is nuts. But right before that, I was using another potent weapon, which I actually got in a very simple way. And it hard carried me through Act 1 super quick. The moment I got it, my damage literally tripled. But we'll get into that in a sec. What you're looking for beyond just the weapon being good is the affixes on it and any offensive slot that adds flat damage. Early game, adding flat damage to any of your gear is going to mean every attack you do deals more damage, and flat damage early is actually very impactful. So you can see how this has added fire damage. You can see how my old weapon has added lightning damage, but it's not just the weapon. We've got added damage on our gloves. Physical damage in this case. I've got it on my ring. So there are more sources of that kind of offensive stuff than just, say, your weapon. In regards to casters, getting extra skill levels on, say, your equipment has a huge impact, and it's a lot less clearer that your weapon and the numbers that it has on it reflects directly onto spells. In the case of spells, adding % spell damage to it and investing in passives that actually give increased spell damage, these are very impactful. It's a different focus and different rules. Now, another way to increase your damage, obviously, would be your skill choice, but importantly, how you're actually comboing these. Path of Exile 2 really encourages you to kind of combo abilities, whether you're swapping between weapons or not. Kind of a setup and then spend situation. It's the idea of me using permafrost bolts to freeze an enemy and then using a different ability to shatter that enemy. Every class has lots of options like that concept. Obviously, another aspect is how you're supporting these things. So in the case of my permafrost bolts, I've got Ice Bite. When I freeze an enemy with Ice Bite, I now get this little bonus of cold damage to all attacks. Another aspect of that will be, say, your skill gem levels. As you find more skill gems and you're not unlocking new skills, you can instead level the gems, and that can increase their potency by quite a lot. And obviously that's important, especially for casters. Another obvious one would be, say, what you're doing with your skill tree, increasing the damage at raw amounts, or massively affecting them. For example, cluster bombs for me means my grenade skills fire an additional projectile. So it's the difference of me firing one explosive grenade, but getting a second one for free, essentially doubling the output of that skill. Finding the most potent notables, these bigger nodes like this, and then racing towards them, those are also going to be power spikes, right? But also lastly, for offensive damage, you want to be thinking about runes. For martial weapons, if you put these runes in your weapon, this is another way to add flat damage, such as lightning damage, cold damage, physical damage, fire damage from the runes I've just got sat here. For a martial weapon, this is a high priority. So obviously I have this incredible weapon here. I'm going to be using it for a little while. Then I will definitely want to socket it. So in my case, I will absolutely use an Artificer's Orb to give it a socket, and I will definitely give it increased physical damage. And if I give it another socket, because, you know, two-handed weapons can have two sockets, I can also give it cold damage on top of the fire damage. And now the number potential on this weapon is getting insane. There's the other side of the coin though, defense, where, you know, we're talking about people who are getting one shot by stuff. You absolutely need enough defense to survive. If you press C on a keyboard, you can see your stats. And as I've gone into Act 2, this has now become a problem that I need to solve. My resistances are taking a bigger hit, and so I'm actually quite vulnerable. Going into Act 2, I need to address this. But it's not just that. How much armor do you have? Evasion? How much life do you have? Your energy shield? If you hold Alt while looking at equipment, it can show you the item level, like I said, for the weapon, but it's relevant too for your armor. Basically, the higher item level, the more potential potency of the affixes you have. So at the top here, I have a really important one on my chest, extra maximum life. If this very same item had a higher item level, the potential increase of maximum life could be significantly more. It could be 20, it could be 50. For example, my unique here is literally giving me 47 maximum life, and this is item level 15 compared to item level 11. It's a big difference. But we've also got armor on these things, energy shields on these things. The higher eye level, the higher potential these defenses will go. And very importantly, element resistance, even in my case, needs to be a high priority to kind of overcome the damage that's coming our way. Right now, my character is stacked offensively, but he's lacking defensively. And so that's my next target to kind of resolve. So that's the concept behind gear and, what's making me deal damage, what's protecting me. Let's talk about how you get these things. There's two sources you're going to rely upon. Drops that are RNG from killing bosses or enemies in general, and then there's vendors, which are in every town. Let's have a look at the ones that are here. Vendors often have multiple tabs, so you need to check this kind of thing. So this one has weapons here. On the second tab, we have some defensive armors. And on the third tab, we have the other slots like gloves and boots and so on. Filling your slots is going to be a massive damage increase and defensive increase. So if you have any slots that are empty, it is absolutely worth it to fill them. Even if it's something not that relevant to you, at least it's a stat stick. Buying from merchants is a great way to do that. This one has all of our armor slots, right? But there's another magical kind of vendor in town that will sell rings, amulets, charms as well, in exchange for gold. To get gold, you just need to do some vendoring. Selling equipment is obviously a great way to do that, but be aware that if you identify something before you sell it, it will be worth more. So in the example you're seeing here, I took something that was worth like 50 gold and then identified it, then sold it, and suddenly it was worth over 120. I almost tripled the value of it when I sold it. As you probably know by now, you can identify things using the limited resource of Scroll of Wisdoms, which may drop pretty often. You can in fact buy those from the magic vendor in town, but as you progress the main story, you'll unlock the hooded one. He's an NPC that helps you respec, but he also identifies items for you for completely free. So just have him identify everything you find, vendor everything, make a load of gold, keep repeating. That way you'll always have gold to interact with these vendors and see what they've got. This stock will upgrade or change as you progress through the story though, so come back and check it pretty regularly. Now that I've made it to the start of Act 2, I have 2 towns worth of vendors. I can check what these 2 are selling, but I can easily open up the map, click Act 1, and go back to the first town, which still has all the vendors from the first one. We have Una, the magic type, where we've got, say, rings, amulets, and so on. And we've got Renly, who sells your general weapons and armor and that kind of thing. But the other vendor that you have, obviously, is Finn, which is the gamble option. As you can see, this costs way more gold than the rest normally. And earlier, I did a little live recording to show the process of gambling to fill my amulet slot, so all my slots were filled. So let's do a quick live example of exactly that. If we take a look at what I've got right now, I have all my slots filled except for one, my amulet. I'm sat on a nice pile of gold, so why don't we try to solve that? Does Una have any amulets for sale that I could just fill this empty slot with right now? Sadly not, she's just selling a ring in regards to that kind of thing. Renly isn't really offering that kind of thing. So in the first town, that kind of leaves me with Finn, and it's going to give me a random thing. It could be amazing, it could be very meh. But you know what's better than nothing? Anything. And for an amulet slot, that's pretty important. So I'm willing to spend 4,500 to just get an amulet of any kind. I haven't had one drop, so I need to resolve this because it's going to give me important stats. So let's go ahead and grab a random amulet with that money. Looks like I got a unique. This is going to give me 12 strength, big max life, big flash recovery, and they charge per second. That's amazing. Compared to having literally nothing there, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, pretty crazy that it went down that way, but that is indeed how I got this unique amulet. So yes, definitely use Finn for gambling if you need to. It's easy to get gold, especially after you've got the hooded one to not actually have any cost behind identifying. My little tip for farming, by the way, is to generally pick the area that's your level or current level. But for the purpose of this video and example, let me just pick this one. Say you're like level 14, 13, 12, you'll be fine here. So as I click on it, it's going to teleport me there. Here I can just run around and kill the area, kill some enemies. We've got an enemy killed here, a ring dropped, cool. Let's say I clear this whole place, get a load of items, go back, sell them, but now the area isn't reset and it's empty of mobs, I've just wiped it. What you can do on the map is hold control and then click it, and it'll bring up this new menu, allowing you to reset the instance and teleport to it again, completely refresh, all the mobs, rares, bosses, whatever, it's all back. So it's a way to infinitely farm XP, gear, drops, and of course, stuff to sell for gold. So you use those processes to fill your slots, they're all full now. And now, every time you come to town, you check with someone like Renly or Una whether your weapon, if there's anything here that's relevant. He just so happens to have a pair of boots here that do have movement speed on them and are higher item level. With this, I'll get max life and multiple element resistances, and some stun threshold, which is really nice. So very easily, I've found what I was looking for. Max life and movement speed, and a bunch of other stuff like element resistances. So I'm happy to buy that, I've got the gold for it. So just like that, I've made a major upgrade. If we look at my stat screen now, no longer does this say minus or 0, I at least have some, which is very important. Now obviously I've shown you another way to increase your output and your defenses too. We have runes. By finding items that have sockets in them, you can either use them or go to a salvage bench and destroy it. This will give you the kind of materials to make those gems that I was using, those orbs, artificer orbs, that then put a socket onto a piece of gear. So right now I have fire, cold, and lightning res that's kind of low. So let's go ahead and take one of those artificer orbs and put a socket onto an equipment piece, like say my gloves. Let's use one of these runes to give myself some of that resistance. Let's go for lightning, since that's the thing I'm lacking the most. Put it in there, and now it's got an extra 12% to lightning resistance. Just like that. Actually, lightning is my most defensive stat, so I no longer need this topaz charm because that's giving me lightning res. Let me put that away, and what should I put on instead? Well, it looks like fire is the resistance that I'm lacking on the most, just barely behind cold. But I don't have a charm that gives me fire resistance, so let's go for a sapphire charm instead. That gives me cold resistance, 25% whenever I take cold. Now, other ways that you can increase your power come from just doing optional stuff, such as wandering around the map and finding an optional boss. Sometimes when you kill these things, you'll get an incredible drop, like this. This gave me 2 skill points to work with, not just the weapon thing for swapping, but actual skill points for the passive. It was comparable to leveling up twice for killing a random optional boss. So exploring the map and making sure you're doing that is incredibly worth. And do all the quests, the side quests especially, that give you relevant rewards. At one point in Act 1, Una's going to give you a little task to go get her old loot, I think it is. And for bringing that back to her by finding it in the zone associated, she gave me another book that gave me 2 more skill levels. It's not just skill levels that you get though. Sometimes you get permanent upgrades, such as, yes, element resistances, which as I've shown we need so we don't get one shot. So side quests and optional bosses, exploring, these are great ways to gain your power permanently too. But another very simple trick is to be equal level or over level of the place you're going to go. Let's take this zone. Monster levels are level 13. If I go here when I'm level 10, I should expect to have a bad time. Things are going to be hard, especially on the bosses. But if I were to come here at level 13 or 14, then I'm going to have a much easier time. So you can go to the previous area where maybe it's easier and just clear the whole thing out. Do the side quests, find all the optional bosses as marked by these skulls, as you can see, even showing me the rewards that it gave me. I'll get great XP, I'll roll the dice for drops and fill slots or get upgrades. I'll make gold so that I can do gambling or purchases from the vendors. And maybe I'll generate some orbs for crafting. Then I'll make my way to that area when I'm equal level or maybe even over leveled and have a much easier experience. On the note of crafting then, there is a lot of things we can consider, whether it's these orbs to enhance them, or whether it's adding quality to items, like say an armorer's scrap. When I take one of these and apply it to something like this, a rare, I'm not going to get a massive amount of quality. As you can see, I got 4% for that. In PoE 1, applying these types of items to improve the quality of it would actually be more impactful, more potent, the lower kind of rarity that it is. But, 4% quality is still good. If you want to learn about what something does, again, hold Alt and hover over it. Quality grants small bonuses to an item depending on the type of item. So if I did this to my weapon, martial weapons would gain 1% more physical per quality. So on my old weapon I did that, plus 4% quality. That was 4% more physical damage per quality. That's a multiplier, basically 4% times. As a martial weapon user, that is massive. So yeah, that's my kind of overview of how I've gained so much power and how I'm trying to approach the game. Checking my stats, I make sure that my element res isn't like direly bad, so I'm not getting one shot. I focus increased maximum life every armor that I can. We try to have higher level equipment that's actually equipped for the higher level potential defenses too, be that armor, evasion, or energy shield. Offensively, as a martial class, it's all about your weapon and the potent power behind that. Having a higher item level has higher potential physical damage, but as I've shown, flat damage, element damage be that fire or cold in my case, adds damage to the hits that I'm doing. An early game that is even more potent when we're dealing with smaller numbers. But don't forget, you can find those things on not just your weapon, but also something like your gloves, your belt, your rings, and so it can be very potent. Generally though, get every slot filled and then start to upgrade it, whether that's quality, the affixes on it, and the more relevant it is to your build, the better. Remember that runes are incredibly potent, especially again for martial classes. In your weapon, that's where I would start, but it can also be a great source of element resistances as well. Make sure that you're nicely leveled, equal or even over leveling the area you're in, and hunting down all optional content like side quests and bosses that provide permanent upgrades. I hope this overview has helped you though, and if you guys have any extra advice to help others, please let us know in the comments, maybe you'll help someone. Otherwise, if it was useful, do drop a like. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.